Hello, can everybody hear me? Whoa, yes, you can hear me. All right, I think we're gonna get started, which is great. And I just want to thank all of you guys for coming to this special Eco Talk. I know it's been a little difficult for a lot of us in the last few days, and just making the effort to be here really does mean a lot to us. So thank you. Shout out to the ESM course. Thank you guys. That's awesome. And I just think it's really important to be supportive and participatory. So thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to Priscilla. Where are you? Kind of turn around. She is, yeah, she's super humble, but she is the person that puts all these eco talks together. And she's so amazing. And I also want to stay standing, Pete Mara. He's our dean, and he's so supportive of these eco talks. And he could identify these birds because he's also an ornithologist. So thank you, Pete. And Amy, welcome. I know it's been an effort to get here, and I'm so excited because she is a woman. She's in an incredible position where she's at Microsoft. And I think she's going to give us a great hour of discussion. Her area of expertise is climate, ecosystems, and water. And Amy is the Senior Global Director for Sustainability, Science, and Innovation at Microsoft. And what does that mean? She informs the company's sustainability strategy, the investment and policy. And she'll talk a little bit more about that. That's pretty cool. It's a really great commitment from Microsoft. So Amy's background is extensive. I'm going to be brief, but I'm going to talk about it because that's important. And so previously, Amy served as Executive Director of Future Earth. She was Assistant Director for Climate Resilience and Information at the White House during the Obama administration. And she was Senior Manager at Google. So you can kind of see where she's going, right? And in the beginning of her career, she was hands-on, where she co-founded Agua Para La Vida. And she worked extensively in Central America and Nicaragua. And that's a nonprofit organization which works with rural communities to enhance access to potable water. And so bringing Amy up now, she's currently serves on the advisory boards of Veolia Institute, the Stanford Woods Institute for the Environment, the Gunn Institute for the Environment. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and is a member of the Academy of Science Roundtable on Climate Security and Committee on Geographic Science. And pretty amazing. So that's awesome. She has both a PhD in environmental science, a PhD in environmental science and an MA, International Policy Studies from Stanford University, and has a BS/MS in Environmental Systems Engineering from Humboldt State University, and a BA in Philosophy from Middlebury College. I think that's really important because you can see the liberal arts as well as the sciences. And a little bit, as Amy says, ecosystems are facing unprecedented threats of loss and degradation globally. AI continues to evolve, obviously, right? And its applications in sustainability are likely to expand over offering new avenues for environmental protection and resource management. I like that, if you think about it. And so I'm really excited to bring Amy up here and have her talk about sustainability in the area of EI. Let's give a hand to Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina, for such a nice introduction. And thank you all for coming out. I know it's a difficult week. lots of change in the air, and I appreciate the time to spend with all of you here. I click to join audio. How do I get rid of that thing? Okay, I'm a Teams person, not a Zoom person, so I don't know that exactly. So I'll let you help. And while you're doing that, I'd love to just get to know who's in the room. So how many of you are undergraduate students here? Oh, very few. Okay. How many of you are graduate students here? Okay. And professors? Great. That's helpful. But how many of you are focused on sustainability at your core? How many of you interact with AI? Oh, so a fair amount. That's good. Okay, is that good?
No, just wait a second.
So I'm going to, as in the introduction said, I lead the sustainability science and innovation at Microsoft. And a portion of that, it means that I actually lead the sustainability and AI work. I also lead our ecosystems work. But it's not all my job. I am going to be talking here about this topic. But I also want to tell you a little bit of how I came to that, to give context of why I think it's so important to think about this issue. So because I work on sustainability and AI, and I've done it actually for a long time, sustainability and digital for a long time. I was mentioned that back in 2009, 7 to 11, I was working at Google. And that was really when I started to work at this intersection of sustainability, science, policy, and technology. And I've really focused on that ever since. And so what I'm asked recently, because there's so much focus all of a sudden on AI, I know it's been around for a long time. I'm asked, will AI be a net benefit or harm for global sustainability? And before I jump into this, I'd like to get a feel for the room. What do people here think? Do you think it will be a net benefit, a net harm, or no significant impact, consequential one way or the other? If you think it's a net benefit, raise your hand. Okay. Net harm? No significant impact? Neutral on the topic? Okay. So people have definitely thought about this issue one way or another. I'll give you my answer. My answer is it depends. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think it depends. But I also want to highlight that I actually believe that the world may not achieve our climate and broader sustainability goals without leveraging the power of AI. And in that context, before I get into that issue, I want to give a little bit of context of my sustainability journey and how I came to work on this issue of AI and sustainability. At the core of this is a question that I've been asking since I started working on sustainability 30 years ago. How can we drive sustainability progress at speed and scale? I first started exploring this topic, really thinking about this topic when I started working in Nicaragua about 30 years ago, where I started this NGO called Agua Para La Vida. And it was such a great experience. We're a small group of folks that started this organization. We raised money, we went down, designed water systems, worked with communities to build the water systems. And it was so impactful. It was impactful on me, it changed communities' lives. But you couldn't help but think about saying, well, how can we scale? How can we do this faster? So many people need water. So many people in Nicaragua, so many people around the world. Is this the best use of my time? Is this the best use of our resources to just do one community at a time? And so we started thinking about how to do that there. We started a school, we trained people, we expanded our fundraising. Now, Agua Para La Vida is an organization, institution in Nicaragua, and we have a US and European support for fundraising. So we started to scale, still in Nicaragua. But I found that for me, that wasn't big enough. I still wanted to think, how do we address these sustainability issues at a bigger scale? How do we really think about these and empower change at speed and scale at a higher level? So I decided in the context of that to go back to school. I had, as at that point, when I was at Agua Para La Vida, I had a degree in a bachelor's in philosophy and a minor in physics. I was always into science. And so, but I was designing water systems and helping to start watershed management programs, didn't know anything really about it. So I decided to go back to university. I went to Stanford and did my dissertation on understanding the vulnerability of regions to climate change. And I had this wonderful opportunity to have my research lab really be a diverse group of people from all these different disciplines working to understand the vulnerability and sustainability of the Yaqui Valley region of Mexico. And so my advisors was Pam Matson and at Stanford, and Roz Naylor. Pam is an ecosystem ecologist, Roz is an economist. And so those were my official lab group, but my real lab group were all the people in this region that came together, were studying different parts of this problem, this issue, this region, this watershed of the Yaqui Valley, looking at things in the uplands and agriculture and ecosystems and coastal systems, all trying to understand economics, social systems, all trying to understand the sustainability, the environmental condition, and what is driving change and what is empowering people to go one way and the other. It was a really amazing experience. And I learned a lot about how to understand and drive change at a larger scale. But it still wasn't quite what I was looking for. It wasn't enough into the actual dimensions of driving change. It was more still understanding what is changing and what is there, not how to drive that change. So I decided to leave academia after my PhD, not do an academic job, because I really wanted to look at how we do this in practice, and kept searching, still a learner, always a learner, and joined the Union of Concerned Scientists and said, what about policies and mobilizing communities? Is that a key piece? Went to Google, building digital technologies to scale solutions. Is that a key piece? Worked at School Global Threats Fund with philanthropy and impact investments, working with startups and civil society. How can different blended finances approaches help drive change? And worked at the White House, developing policies and partnerships to drive change. And I think the answer to how to scale, all of these have a huge influence, right? And how to scale. There's no one silver bullet to this. Eventually, I ended back in a academic-y-like situation, which is Future Earth. I was the executive director of Future Earth, which is an international network of researchers working specifically to support sustainability globally. And at this context, we were asking different questions than when I was a PhD student. One of the big questions was, how do we accelerate transformations to global sustainability? It was really about, some of the questions were about the science of how. How do we do that? And I think that was really compelling, but really found still that straight research environment, even if it was reaching out to the policy environment, wasn't the space for my change. I really wanted to have an impact more directly on driving change. And so I tell you my journey here, not because I necessarily think you're interested in the details of my whole career, but to give you context for why I'm highlighting a few key areas which I think have come to believe that are really key for driving for the world to reach scale and speed and sustainability. And I think they are AI and digital technologies, the private sector, partnerships, and foresight. I don't have time to go through all of these. I'm going to really focus on the top one, AI and digital technologies. So as I go into this, let me first sort of level set here on what I mean by sustainability. Obviously, everybody raised their hand for sustainability, so I don't need to go into this in depth. But just to level set what I mean when I say sustainability, there are a lot of different sustainability goals out there. I think we can capture them in three key buckets. One is the world needs to reach net zero emissions by 2050. We need to be nature positive by 2030. And we need to do all this on a path which is equitable and inclusive growth for all. So those are big goals. Those are big goals in a very short timeline. Let me unpack what that means in some concrete terms, just some examples of what are the things that we have to do to be able to achieve those goals. Here are a few examples. We need to increase electricity supply 2 to 3 times by 2050. That's a huge project. That means that's an infrastructure project. It's an energy project, it's an infrastructure project, it's an economics project. We need to not just increase the electricity supply, but we need to ensure that that electricity is generated by clean energy, zero carbon energy. So the IEA predicts we need 8 to 10 times as much global renewable power by 2050. But it's not just the energy sector, right? It's all sectors. So for example, one sector that's really relevant to us at Microsoft and also the world is construction materials like cement, steel, and these industries also have to be decarbonized in the next few decades. And of course, energy isn't the only issue. Emissions isn't the only issues. We have to protect ecosystems. We have to do this in a way that helps protect and feeds the world. And these are some other examples of hurdles in the nature and people space. And you can imagine there are a lot of different goals that I could put up here, but I want to put these up just for illustration of the magnitude and the speed of change that's needed. And so, as I said at the beginning, I really believe that so many of these we will not be able to achieve if we effectively leverage the power of AI and other digital technologies. And that's because I see there are 3 key bottlenecks that are constraining. And they're not the only bottlenecks, but I think they're powerful bottlenecks that are constraining progress on sustainability and addressing these goals that I highlighted. One is that sustainability challenges are often too complex for conventional analysis. 2 is sustainability solutions are slow and costly to develop. And 3, the sustainability workforce is constrained by capacity gaps. And AI really has game-changing capabilities that can address all 3 of these hurdles. For example, one of AI's superpowers is definitely to be able to understand, manage, and optimize complex systems. And let me give an example of where this is so important. And there's so many examples for this. But this is a headline in the Wall Street Journal: to keep the lights on, we need artificial intelligence. And this is becoming increasingly true for many reasons, but let me highlight a few. One, as we increase the supply of electricity, and we need to do that because one of the key roads to transitioning to net zero requires that we electrify everything. And then that makes it easier for that to be powered by zero carbon energy. So we're increasing the amount of electricity. Our electricity grids, that means we have to build more electricity grids. And then it's more complicated because we have more distributed energy sources from different renewable sources. And it's also many more pieces plugging into the grid. And when we have renewables, of course, we know that power only comes when the sun is shining and the wind's blowing. So we have to manage this more complex system. And that's where AI can be a critical role. But AI can also help to address constraints on the transmission line. I mentioned before that we also need to increase transmission capacity. And this includes building transmission capacity, but also getting more of the existing capacity. And this is where AI can also help. We've invested in a company called Line Vision that we work with, which can use dynamic line rating systems, which really brings together a lot of information and says how can we maximize electricity through the transmission lines at certain times. And this can increase by 40%. And in those regions where it increases, that means we can bring in more renewables. And that's often the limiting capacity factor. And another area, if you can see all of these pieces coming together, is when you want to expand the access to renewables, you also need to improve weather forecasting. Right now, the near-term weather forecasting, which is so critical for managing these systems, is actually really poor in traditional models. But AI is really transforming this for seasonal forecasting and short form forecasting. And this not only has importance for the economy, for health and well-being, but also for an energy system, because this is also part of maximizing what we can get out of now. And it's not just the energy system. I'm not going to go through examples, but I did want to just highlight that there are a lot of other systems. For example, food waste. Food waste accounts for 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. And if we can optimize those systems and really focus our AI systems on doing that, we can make real strides on that. And already studies are showing that anywhere from 15 to 50% for companies are reducing their emissions. So let me go to the next one. AI can accelerate the development of sustainability solutions. I think this one is really big and one that we all probably are familiar with because of our living through COVID-19. And the process, we got out of COVID-19 much sooner than we would have. Why? Really because of AI. It was a huge breakthrough there, where AI enabled the development of the vaccines in weeks rather than what it would have taken years from traditional methods. And this same approach can be applied to so many things. And one of the key areas where this is becoming so critical is materials. Now, you might not, if you're not deep into the climate and sustainability world, you might not think of materials as such a critical piece of the sustainability puzzle, but it's central. Because if you can have materials that can absorb carbon, that can absorb energy and hold energy, they're cheaper, that use less rare minerals, you could reimagine how we build things, power things, move things. And that's why materials is such a key part of the sustainability journey. And this process of how AI can help materials research is so inspiring to me to see how previously materials research to find new materials to do things would be kind of trial and errors, test things in the lab, really expensive, theoretical, back from first principles. But this process in moving towards the role of AI in this has really put this whole thing on its head, turned around how we approach this, where you can have a database where you have millions of material properties, comprehensive understanding of different properties, and begin to ask, I want a material with these properties, and then have machines go do these molecular simulations and model these out and give some recommended results. And those results can help with the power generation and storage, improve carbon removal, concrete and cement, carbon storage and utilization. There's a whole range of different applications that this sort of breakthroughs can have. And there already are some examples of this coming through. Just this past year, Microsoft partnered with Pacific Northwest National Laboratories to discover new battery materials, which use less lithium, more powerful. And this, again, was weeks rather than years, which would have assumed in traditional methods. So now let me turn to the workforce. AI can empower the workforce. I work at a company, Microsoft, which our mission is to empower every organization and people to do more. And this really is about digital technologies overall, but AI really expands that. A couple of years ago, we did this study to assess what is the sustainability, what is the background of the people who are coming into companies like Microsoft and others for sustainability roles. And I was really, this was actually my first year there, and we were expanding our sustainability staff across the company. And Microsoft has 220,000 people around the world. Um, and really curious, where do people come to? We did a survey. We worked with BCG to do survey companies. And what was interesting, we found most people, most companies, including Microsoft, hire people with a business degree, and they learned sustainability on the job. And it's hard though, because a few years before, we didn't have any sustainability process. So it's hard to imagine how is this working? And I'm just coming in knowing, and it was a really interesting process to think about how that educational system is preparing or not preparing for the jobs that we had, because I think that the challenge is it's been really hard to hire the staff with the right skill set. Just to give you a little picture, and you can look at this report if you're interested, this was sort of a summarizing picture that we developed to think about the different roles and the different skill sets that we thought sustainability scientists need as they come in to the workforce today. Systems thinking, futures thinking, circular thinking, design thinking. We sort of went through design versus values thinking, but a range of different skill sets where digital is one of them, but as part of this whole intersection of these different big ways of thinking of the world that most programs, most schools, business schools, environmental programs don't bring when you traditionally get out. I think that's changing, and that's exciting. But that was sort of one of the purposes of this paper, and working with academic institutions to build programs that can help meet these needs. And so this was the gap. And I think there's a real key, the opportunity I see for AI in this space is that there can be really targeted assistance. People come in at different levels. People have see different parts of the elephant, if you will. And you need to understand these whole processes. So you can have personalized assistance, individualized training, as well as workforce optimization that can actually expand your work. And there are already tools that are being developed in this space, which I think is really exciting. But again, it is early days, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for more work. Okay, so I just told you what I think is Microsoft's superpowers. I mean, not Microsoft, sorry, AI superpowers. But I also want to really highlight, but AI is certainly no guarantee for sustainability progress. This is a paper that I contributed to that came out in 2022, a few years ago, that was looking at what we were doing is what is called digitalization in the Anthropocene. And this looks at what are the different scenarios that we could imagine in the world and for sustainability and AI and digitalization. And you can see we identified 3 conceptual scenarios. One in which AI and digitalization induces greater consumption and drives us down a planetary stabilization, really intensifies the current path, if you will. And the other 2 actually drive down decarbonization from accelerating innovation and systematic efficiencies. But importantly, all of these paths are intertwined with social issues, equity issues, economic issues, and we can't separate those. So we don't want to just look for a path, of course, using these technologies in isolation of these other social issues, because we want the world that is both environmentally sound and social and equitable. So this was sort of the motivation for exploring the development of this playbook, which I led last year. The development last year, we released last year, called Accelerating Sustainability with AI. And basically what we asked was, okay, so we know that there's 2 different paths we could take, or 3 different paths, or multiple different paths we could take. What has to be true for us to be able to leverage these 3 game-changing capabilities that I just told you about for AI to be able to accelerate sustainability progress? And we identified 5 key plays, if you will, to our playbook. investing in AI to accelerate sustainability solutions, develop digital and data infrastructure for inclusive use of AI, minimize resource use in AI operations, advance AI policies and governance principles for sustainability, and build workforce capacity for the use of AI in sustainability. I'm going to go through these just to give you a flavor of what these are, why we found these and what we mean by these. Invest in AI to accelerate sustainability solutions. This might be obvious, but the reality is you can talk about, I gave all these examples of what is possible, but if we don't invest really big in those solutions, they'll still just be what is possible, right? We need to actually decide, yes, this is a priority use for these resources to solve these problems. And that's in the applications for efficiency and optimization. It's for the research and development for sustainability solutions and for empowering the workforce. I think we're really still early days in this. It's much more advanced in things like medicine. Develop digital data and infrastructure for inclusive use. So this is really, when we think about global sustainability issues, when you don't have data in certain areas, it's not just an equity issue. You might actually not be solving the right problem. You might not be understanding the issue enough if you have data gaps. And this is really true in a range of different processes. For example, on the left here, there's this is a summary of biodiversity information coverage. Lots of different ways of doing this. This is one illustration where you can see there's a wide range. For some reason, a wide range of coverage. For some reason, red is 100% rather than low. I'm not sure why that is, but this was a figure that I took from a paper. References are below. But you can see there's a wide range where there's huge areas of the world that really have 0 to 25% coverage in information. And then digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure is critical to be able to build up the resources to do analysis and transformations in those regions, and also to build that capacity. And a similar figure you can see there on the right in terms of the imbalance in terms of coverage, with dark blue being most coverage and the light blue being yet less coverage, and the yellow dark orange being less than 50%. They're really low. So the third area is to minimize resource use and source sustainably. And so there are lots of ways to do this in terms of data centers. I'm sure you've seen a lot of news about data centers, and I expect there'll be questions on that. I look forward to that discussion. But I want to just highlight quickly here areas that Microsoft's working, and I know our partners and peers and collaborators are too. Optimizing energy and water use in data centers, really critical. Get that as low as possible. Advance in low carbon materials. Data centers are built with concrete and steel often, although we're experimenting with other materials, and also experimenting with minimizing the emissions from carbon. Improve the efficiency of AI algorithms. That's another area of research, and even building smaller models for different things. We've built a lot of small language models and focusing on how do we manage and enable and power the range of different opportunities in this space with a combination of different types of model for different purposes. And finally, expanding access to carbon-free energy, which is such a constraint at this stage. The fourth is advance AI policy principles and governance. And this is really important because, you know, just like I said, if you don't invest in AI, it's not going to be able to be used. And if you don't have the policy context to be able to use it, and incentivize to use it, and structure to use it, and guidelines to use it, it also can't be advanced in an effective way. And so one areas that we focus on is promoting and advocating for policies that accelerate the transition to carbon-free electricity grids, align policies to incentivize and power the use of AI for sustainability outcomes specifically, and then govern AI. So to ensure that it is safe, secure, and trusted. Finally, it's build the workforce capacity to use AI. And this is a measure, an index of AI preparedness by the IMF that's prepared. And I want to highlight here that, first of all, there's a geographic distribution, but it's not even a geographic what countries in global south versus global north, but really in the workforce today, some studies have shown up to 40% of the workforce may need to reskill in the next 3 years to really be able to take advantage and keep up in the pace of this AI evolving space. And I want to highlight, this is not about technical skills of how to code and computing skills for AI. It's about how to use AI, how to work in a space leveraging AI, how to work along with AI. You know, there's a lot of discussion about where AI will take jobs away, but really, I think that the increasing belief is that most of the many jobs will really be taken away with people who can use AI, not necessarily by AI. So this was the playbook, and I hope I've convinced you that these are 5 really critical parts, and that these three game-changing capabilities really are game-changing capabilities. I want to now switch gears a little bit and put some context of what I just all talked about in the context of the media around AI and sustainability, because I think that there is a lot of media, and my perspective is that it's misleading. And I want to remind you, I've spent my whole career doing sustainability, right? I came to Microsoft because I think that there's an important role for private sector and for digital technologies to drive this. So with that in context, I want to highlight that I think that in many media headlines, there's this feeling that's communicated that running AI models poses a massive threat to global sustainability. And I'd like to suggest that that is inaccurate. Here are some of the headlines. AI's thirst for knowledge is bad for global water supplies. Generative AI's environmental costs are soaring. AI's carbon footprint is bigger than you think. Booming AI demand threatens global electricity supplies. These are all examples, and I'm sure you've seen many others. It seems like there's one almost every week. And I think that the challenges with these headlines, they're threefold. One is they often use inappropriate or misleading analogies. The second is there's a conflation of local challenges and global sustainability crisis. And the third is a failure to consider the holistic impacts of AI expansion. And let me just go through a little bit of this. So inappropriate and misleading analogies consider this in the context of energy consumption of AI, for example. You might have heard some variations of a statement like ChatGPT is already consuming the energy of 33,000 homes. That's a lot of homes, isn't it? That's a big number. Well, if you take the same number of the energy used for 33,000 homes, and then you say, okay, how much is that in terms of how much energy is used in US homes in 1 minute? And they're equal. So in other words, the energy used for responding to ChatGPT queries globally in 1 day, all the queries globally in 1 day, is the same amount of energy that is used in 1 minute of watching TV in US homes alone. So, and this is the analogy. You can always compare something and make something seem big or something seem small, right? 33,000 homes seems like a big number, but there are a lot of homes in the US, and 33,000 homes is a small amount of them. And people watch a lot of TV. So, and another example of this, just to give perspective, is if you take idle appliances that are on, that are just using energy in the background. Again, ChatGPT used for 1 day to answer all the queries from around the world uses as much energy as idle appliances use in 3 minutes in the US. So this gives you some perspective of this conflation of the local and global and misleading analogies. Similar story on water. Oftentimes there's this one report that highlights that ChatGPT drinks a bottle of fresh water for every 20 to 50 questions we ask. Again, if you look at water use, and I'm using the TV analogy again, that actually the water used in watching TV in US homes for 1 minute is also the amount of water used in ChatGPT global use in 1 day. And why? Because what we don't recognize in the general public is that our energy system is integrated and intertwined with our water system if we have a fossil fuel system. And so 75% of the water that you see reported in data centers is actually because they're still dependent on fossil fuel systems, a lot of them, even though that's transitioning. And so what people don't realize is when you turn on your TV, you're using water. So that is a challenge and a miscommunication. And this is why I say these analogies. And this other one I think is really powerful, though. When you think about another way of thinking about this is 1 day of ChatGPT answering queries around the world is also, the water it uses is equal to 1 minute of leaking pipes, of water lost in pipes leaking in the US. So those are, I think, pretty powerful statistics. Now let's look at another challenge I highlighted, conflating local challenges with global sustainability crisis. Headlines like booming AI demand threatens global electricity supply. This is from data from the International Energy Agency, the IEA, which highlights a projection of the historical and then the projection of AI and data use relative to global electricity supply. So you can see in 2022, it was 0.03% of AI was energy use. And in 2026, it's supposed to increase 10 times and it becomes 0.3% of energy use. And the projections that just came out in the World Economic Outlook shows that even for the next decade, it's expected to still remain quite small from a global perspective. However, and so this shows here, if you go, this is a study by McKinsey, and it looks out, as I said before, one of the big challenges is that electricity demand is increasing. This is part of electrifying everything and part of a key part of solving the sustainability challenge and the decarbonization challenge. And so you can see this is the growth of electricity out to 2050, a projection that was made. And AI is a component of that growth in 2050, but you can see it's a small component, and you have to remember that this is just data centers. AI is only a portion of the data centers, but those data centers can empower and drive the change that is so needed. Having said that, that's not to say they're not energy challenges with AI and data centers. But they're not a global sustainability challenge. They're a local challenge. And those local challenges are real and they're important. We need to address them. So on the right, you see this global sustainability perspective that I already highlighted. And on the left, it really highlights, switch that. On the left and then the right, it really highlights the local challenge. So where, although globally, AI is only a small percentage of electricity use, data centers is a little bit bigger percentage if you look at data centers all up. But if you go to certain locations where data centers are focused, are really concentrated, then it's a huge amount. In Ireland in 2022 was 17%. And so when you increase in those regions, it becomes a big component of the electricity grid. And those are the regions where there can be challenges. And those are real problems that we have to address. And there are many, many ways to think about that. In the context of what Microsoft is doing, for example, in Ireland, is working with local communities, really working to bring more renewables on the grid, working to enhance energy storage, and working to enhance the transmission capacity with things like line vision. We aren't working directly in Ireland at that point, but I think those kinds of capacities, looking holistically about how we can do that, is really important. And we need to do more of that. And we need to also think differently maybe about where we build and how we build. And finally, the failure to consider the holistic impacts of AI expansion. So I talked about this example before about leaking pipes. Well, if you think about the fact that the water used for 1 day of using of ChatGPT is equal to 1 minute of loss of US pipes, and then you recognize that AI has a critical role to play to help find and stop leaking pipes, then you think holistically about this. And those are the real problems that these big challenges that can solve. So we're working with a group called Phytotech, which is helping to reduce water loss from municipal leaks up to 25% in many regions. And this is still early days in this technologies and this approach. And we're also working with companies like Line Vision, which is working to expand capacity up to 40 to 60% in some regions. So I talked about there are these multiple different areas, and I don't have time to go into the others. I'm going to wrap up soon, but I do want to just say a bit about the private sector and partnerships just for context. And when you think about a company's role, it's really important to think about 3 different levels, right? So at Microsoft, in my sustainability and innovation work, I work across 3 different levels. One is helping to inform the reduction of corporate footprint across carbon, water, and waste. The other is helping our business, where we're empowering customers to advance sustainability using technology. And the final is enabling conditions for global action. What are those conditions that Microsoft needs, or customer needs, and the world needs to be able to advance? And that's one of these areas where I think advancing in science and technology and policy. And an area that I often work with universities from around the world on these topics, and would love to explore how we can work with Georgetown on this. And the final area that I want to end with and really think about is foresight. And I think this is important always, but it's particularly important when you think about sustainability in the era of AI, because things are moving so quickly, and they're going to move even quicker. We had a paper in Nature a couple months ago, and it was calling for scenarios of AI, looking at how you develop scenarios for its implications for emissions. And we had a diverse group of academics, people from the industry around the world. And what we were calling on is that we have a regular update, which is looking at both sectors, the emissions from the operations, which is small relative to the other, and the emissions implications of the use of AI and the systems changes that are driving this. And we had this discussion, how often should these be? You know, the IPCCs happen every 6 years, right? And some people on the team said it has to happen every 6 months. And I was like, that's not realistic. But the AI folks were saying things are changing so quickly that we really need to have this as an operational piece to be as fast as every 6 months to be able to understand the changes ahead. In the paper, we ultimately said at least every year. And the reason I think this is so important is to drive change at speed. We need to plan for the future, not the present, because too quickly the present becomes the past. And if you think about the approach that's evolving quickly, in the past, sustainability and environmental challenges were unfolding incrementally, and now they're really changing exponentially. They were understood as local, and now they're really increasingly understood as global. They were addressed and communicated with analog tools, and now that's digital. They were powered by science theory, and now it's big data M theory. They were approached as peripheral issues, and now they're becoming central issues. And they were governed previously, I would say, locally, but top down, and now increasingly bottom up. And if we look in the future, we don't know what the future will hold, but I think that strategic foresight in these areas is really important. I think that the future will, my projection is that the future will hold an increasing, not just exponential, but this increasing focus on VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, that will be a challenge as we see as the sustainability unfolds. It will be from global to systemic. It will be governed not just digitally, but assessed and communicate with intelligent systems. Big data will be key, but we also be powered by big insights. It will be a central issue, but I hope it will also be a leading issue, and not just be bottom up, but it will be governed, decentralized, and with algorithmic powers. And I think having those pictures in mind, having your own pictures in mind, what that future is really important if we're going to get scale and speed of change. So thank you for sticking with me for this discussion. And in summary, I really do think AI is critical for achieving scale and speed for transformations needed to achieve sustainability goals. But we will only succeed if we collectively work to consciously create the enabling conditions for success. Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic. You can tell Amy's a really big thinker, so that's great. Let's give her another hand. That was amazing. The amount of time she put together to put that. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes, 7 minutes to ask any question. I'm sure, great. We might even extend and stay a little bit longer. So awesome. Priscilla's got the mic. You go ahead, Priscilla, you choose.
Hi,
Here.
my question is around scale and speed. Do you think that Microsoft is pushed more to optimize for AI based on competition from like other private sector companies, or are they driven more by the sustainability goals?
So let me clarify your question. So do you mean Microsoft as a company, are we pushed
Yeah.
on sustainability issues, or?
Yeah, are the sustainability issues that you basically like for working in scale and speed, do you optimize like the like algorithms or like your goals more, like do you make them faster because of how fast the competitors are moving, or are your greater goals and pressures from, you know, wanting to meet sustainability goals before 2030?
Let me unpack that. I think that you have two questions. There's moving fast in the AI space, which part of that is algorithms, but it's not necessarily the speed of the algorithms, right?
Yeah.
So advancing sustainability developments and new products, and you know how fast AI can develop. That's one question, and that isn't done for sustainability, right? That is done from a corporate perspective, and but there is a focus, and that's why we developed this playbook to say, okay, we're doing it for all these different pieces, and one is sustainability, right? And so, and then we have our sustainability goals, which is, and you think about the picture I had of the three areas. One is our sustainability goals, then it's how we help our customers, and then how we context in the world. Our sustainability goals is just about how we reduce our own footprint, right? And we have made those commitments. We made those commitments in first in 2020 to become carbon negative, water positive, zero waste, and protect more ecological lands than we use. And those, I mean, sure, as a company, societal demands and what companies do and what our customers require certainly influences the decision making. I think that the point where that decision was made was right after the 1.5 IPCC report came out. And that was a time when our president, Brad Smith, said, is this real? I mean, that was a wake up call for, I think, our leadership, and our leadership is very, very involved in it.
Rebecca?
Yeah, so first, thank you for that lovely talk, and for walking us through that in a very open and sort of transparent manner. My question is a bit critical, so I wanted to acknowledge that part of why I feel comfortable asking this question is because you were so genuine and open. But you know, I worked at Brown, and a lot of these things have been around for years to decades, right? So saying we're using AI to, you know, predict the weather, of course, right? I mean, machine learning, large language models, talking with chatbots. I was talking with chatbots 10 years ago. What seems really new to me is the way that it has scaled so quickly and some of the ethical issues that feel like they've been eclipsed. So I'm wondering, from the perspective of Microsoft, what is Microsoft doing to ensure that the data used in these models is used with consent from the people who work to generate these data, how they're ensuring that those people are credited, and how they're going to compensate people who often spend years in the field on their hands and knees for all the profit they're going to generate as a result of these data that they're using. So, thank you.
Super important question. Thank you for your question. So we do have a responsible AI team, and I work very closely with them. I co-chair a cross-company working group on AI and sustainability, and that includes our responsible AI, and then the responsible AI team has their process to do these things, and I work with them. So there is a lot of cross-pollination, but the questions you ask essentially sit in the responsible AI team, which has been around for a decade. Is that right? And we have an internal governance structure to look at our different principles, and I should have a slide of those principles, but I don't have one here. And a governance structure to look through different use cases that are at risk, data transparency, and we put out a report on a regular basis about that. And so there is a real focus in the company to improve those processes and an increasing intersection of those processes with our sustainability pieces. I will say that of course, AI has been around for a long time. I don't know if you were here at the beginning. I was also highlighting that I have been working on it for a long time before it became a big issue. I do think that there's a reason why there's more focus now for me on this. Not only is the power becoming much greater of these models in a really transformative way, but also that there's, I think, an increasing need to leverage these and to target those powers more effectively on the solutions that we need. But as I highlighted in that, the scenarios that I outlined in this paper that we created a number of years ago, you can't look at the outcomes of these issues in isolation of the social inequity issues. And I'm fully aware of that. And think we haven't figured it out yet. And it is challenging that things are moving so quickly, because sometimes, we need to put safeguards on and make sure those safeguards on before we move too fast. So thank you for your question, and I'm happy to share more resources from our company on that.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. First of all, this was super, super insightful. I'm one of those classic business students who do not have a background in sustainability. So I feel very, very seen when you say AI really helps, because it has helped me quite a lot. So thank you for that. I'm also part of a lot of educational efforts, and you were talking about people having to reskill. Now, from your perspective, what is it that we students need to get behind? What kind of skills do we need to learn in order to thrive with that technology coming onto the space?
Well, I think about this in two ways. One is in how to thrive in sustainability with those technologies, right? So I think that's really important, because I had a slide of the different skills that I think you need in sustainability, and those don't go away, even though it was developed before the spotlight got on AI. Those skills are still really critical. And I'm happy to share the report that we developed that highlighted the skills that I think we need in sustainability. And I think those are things like systems thinking, futures thinking, understanding the Earth system as a foundation. And then in terms of how you use AI, again, it's not a skill for coding. It's not a computer skills, but how do you, and in terms of empowering the workforce, work alongside AI? How do you have that be your empower? And how can you bring that to your company? And I actually think everybody's learning that right now. So you need to sort of figure it out for yourselves, what works. And there are people who have been trying to figure out what works and become leaders right away because they're like, this is what, what's happening. And I know how I use it in my work, but Microsoft uses it in a much bigger way in research. And one of the things that I do at Microsoft as part of my role is I work with Microsoft Research. I also work with the research institutions internally and the operational areas. And we're exploring and developing how can we use these tools to help with our targets, right? And we bring people together and say, how can we have an AI reduction roadmap? And that is exploration. Like no one person has that in their mind. They only know one part of it. And so I think that's an exciting space here. There's a lot of creativity, but the important thing is it's about how can it empower, not how do you build it? How do you use it for sure to build other things?
One more question, but before we have the question, I just want to make a quick announcement that our last Eco Talk for this term will be next Friday, and it will be given in the Arup building, right? And it's given by Thomas Lowe Fleschner, and he's founding director of the Natural History Institute, and will present his talk on the enduring and elemental importance of natural history. So
Great.
I just want you guys to know that before you all walk away. Okay, last question.
Hi, I'm from the MSCSM program. I think a bunch of us are very excited that you're here because you represent that intersection between business and sustainability that we're working on. My question is about filling those critical sustainability data gaps, and specifically in emerging economies. As the map that you showed before, a lot of the global south is kind of underrepresented in that area, and there is an issue. So could you share maybe an example of a strategy that has effectively navigated some of the issues like data infrastructure or like lack of AI preparedness?
To address them. So yeah, we have a couple of, I gave an example of biodiversity. I just got back from COP16 in Colombia, so it's on my mind. And so in the context of data gaps, there's, as you know, there's huge data gaps in biodiversity, and getting that at scale when there's such diversity around the world is challenging. But in those areas, I think the global efforts to respond to and help support the UN Biodiversity Plan is really integrating with AI tools, science and AI tools. And that's using Earth observations from satellites, but also cameras and bioacoustics and eDNA and environmental DNA to understand the health of an ecosystem in a way that we couldn't at scale. So if you can set up systems that are monitoring different parts of sounds, you can connect those to systemic, holistic views of the health of the system. And then if you can do that at scale, all of a sudden you can look at fill those holes in a much easier way because you can do it at scale. And then the other issue in terms of the infrastructure and scaling, we have targeted regions in different regions of the world where we're doing these development and training programs for this very specific focus. My focus in the context of these is bringing in the sustainability context. I've had a couple of talks on LinkedIn, courses on LinkedIn that focus on trying to get in the business area, foundational understanding of sustainability, but also thinking about the role of AI in this space. That doesn't necessarily get the whole world, but it has a global perspective. But we have a big training program on AI globally. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
It's great. Thank you. That was awesome. We'll meet the postdocs over, you guys know, and we'll see you guys. We're going to actually go over to your building later. So, thank you.
Great.
Good job.